Torture Garden Podcast.
All right, welcome to Torture Garden. I'm Nick Cave's bald spot, also known as Jimmy.
And I'm oh jeez, that's kind of a high hurdle to overcome.
You know what you are? You're you're the spikes on Kerry King's armband.
I'm the Spikes of Kerry King's armband.
Yeah.
That's timely because they are breaking up.
I saw that. You know, not to get too off track right away, but
I was gonna say right after
like yeah, I would just like to say that's a good move, guys. Like, I really respect that because I really think this was like long overdue.
Yeah.
Really, ever since Hanneman's gone, but you know, at least it's happening for a little bit.
Yeah, bands gotta know when to go out.
Yeah, well, and until they come back.
Yeah.
But
Speaking of people that were once great, that brings us kind of to where we're going to talk about.
Yeah, because jazz. Yeah,
that was an amazing segue.
Yeah, I know, jazz. Just it's like a PowerPoint, but even worse. But an audible PowerPoint. Okay. So yeah, but for those who don't know, me and Scott are really big fans of jazz. Mm-hmm. I don't think either of us could say that we're experts at all, but we've listened to enough that we like to talk about jazz musicians a lot, and I had this idea that we would just talk about who we think the greatest jazz musicians are, and there are a bunch of different ways that I think we could handle this. So like, you know, how do you want to go about this, Scooty?
I think the way I what might be easiest to do it is to try to, I think we were talking before, like construct the ideal jazz band. Or
Yeah,
who in our like dream jazz band would we want, and try to come to some type of consensus.
I was thinking of that too, but then I also think that it's worth mentioning like composers, like some of the jazz composers, because I think, you know, some of the big names, you know, like Miles Davis, you know, I think part of the reason they're regarded as so great is because, along with being great at their instruments, they were also amazing at composing music.
Exactly, yeah.
And so I feel like we need to put that somewhere too, or at least we should. So maybe it's worth just starting with that, just on top of just who do you think is the best, or some of the best composers we can think of. Because I mean, I actually, even though I said don't write a list, I sort of put a list, not of like in any order, just because like there are a lot of jazz musicians out there.
Yeah. And
I wanted to get some down that I definitely knew that I liked a lot,
mm-hmm.
that I thought were deserving of this. And I mean, Miles is definitely up there.
For sure.
Coltrane's up there. But one that we might not talk about a whole lot, which I plan we are going to do this episode sometime in the future, is Sun Ra.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just I think in terms of being a composer, just the man just was like nonstop, you know, for really his entire life, and he was always playing around with something new, you know, exploring everywhere from bebop to big band music to free jazz, and sort of just putting everything all together in this just like, I don't know, this jazz gumbo, I guess. Yeah, I would love, yeah, I think he's definitely worth mentioning, because not a lot of people, you know, give credit to Sun Ra, even though he was doing, you know, what Ornette Coleman was doing, you know, even arguably like years before. And like, you know, like, even modal music, like he pioneered, like, you know, he was doing that before Miles Davis did Kind of Blue. Like,
it is very interesting and I think that speaks to maybe he's a little bit underrated in the fact that he deserves, you know, quite a bit more praise, is because when you know, I've checked out a lot of his stuff, and when you listen to the things he was doing and the ideas he was bringing to the table, and then you go back and see the years those albums came out, like you said, it's just kind of interesting that he isn't more a part, or as much a part of the conversation as some obvious picks like Davis and Coltrane and whatnot.
Well, I think it's sort of like actually we were talking about this early before we started recording, but I'm currently reading William Gaddis's The Recognitions, which sort of has a very similar type of style to it. That Gaddis was sort of doing what authors like Thomas Pynchon and what Joseph Heller were doing years before. And predicted a lot of, sort of this blurring between the line of authentic and, plagiarism. Mm-hmm. And so, it's definitely not like, it's more like, I just think, like, it's not that Sun Ra, like, I think he gets the praise he deserves, but I don't think he's just, like I don't think there's enough coverage of it. I think that's the best way to put it, I guess. But any other composers you can really think of?
I think what's interesting about these kind of conversations is the fact that if you don't include some of the big names, your list is incomplete. But then if you only include the big names, what's the point in your list? Like, it's kind of a catch-22 is that you're gonna criticize either way.
Yeah, well, so we should probably preface by saying that this is our fucking list, we have not listened to every single jazz album in the world, and we're not in love with every single jazz album in the world.
And just because Miles Davis has gotten his due doesn't mean it's not deserved.
Maybe we should put time constraints maybe too, because if we're talking about like jazz from like 1920 to now, like that's a little big. And it like, since the way jazz is sort of like metamorphosized into this new sort of thing, like, you got new jazz and you've got like, free improvisation and like sort of avant-garde jazz that are like all sort of part of it, but not really. Like, I'm wondering where we draw the line.
I guess just even not like a hard stop, but nothing super recent.
So
stuff that
maybe like late fusion, so like 80s on. We probably just won't. Not that there aren't people around there. I mean, Zorn comes up as a composer and a saxophonist, but I don't think that his work represents what we think of as typically jazz.
Okay.
So I would probably want to make that stuff, but you let me know what works for you.
For me, I mean, this guy I think is super underrated. I found him by accident.
Henry Threadgill.
Yeah, there you go, Henry Threadgill. His career spans the 70s on through. I mean, he's still releasing music, and I think why he's stuck with me so much, because I think I randomly stumbled upon what's it called? I think it was he's had a number of different...
Was it Irregular Locks?
It was that one, but then I went back and I think it's with one of his quartets, Make a Move or whatever. Geez, I gotta find it. I had the name on my tip of my tongue, and Making a Move, and this is from 95, so it's a little bit past where we kind of set the limit. But one of the things I love about his style of composing is that it's very malleable. It's very he's able to bring it sounds adventurous but also kind of grounded, and it has those experimental tendencies but still feels like it was composed. Like, it doesn't get rid of that. It kind of sounds a little different than your standard free jazz or avant-garde jazz. It's just kind of freewheeling. It has that kind of forward-looking experimental edge, but still feels as though it was written, it was composed, and it's kind of this piece of music. But more importantly is how he's able to write for an eclectic eclectic roster of musicians. He's written a lot of tracks with just for acoustic guitar quartets or groups, and then he'll incorporate strings, and then he has different brass instruments, like he'll have a French horn and trombone, and he likes to have big ensembles. Like the most prominent group he had was his sextet, So he had, you know, a lot of, I think at least two saxophones and whatnot. You know, just a lot of power and a lot of different elements coming into play. And he's not really talked about a lot.
Yeah.
You know,
I honestly haven't listened to Henry Threadgill at all. Because you always talk about him, and it's more like, you know, I hear the words and they go into my head, but they go out the other ear, and I'm like, oh yeah, Henry Threadgill exists, which I'm like, fuck, because like I'm always up for like some new avant jazz, which, you know, if we're gonna be adding somebody from around that time period, without Leo Smith.
I was actually going to suggest him too. Yeah.
Even though I personally find his stuff to be a little odd and like really to be on the fringe of what we consider jazz, but I still think that he deserves a place just because of the interesting like sort of timeline that he's in. Because, you know, like he came up, I want to say like 70s, 80s, and you know, just, you know, never been. It's almost like a Sun Ra, like almost like today's Sun Ra, in a way, because like he's been doing like all this stuff that doesn't get a whole lot of attention. Actually, it's really only recently gotten big attention. Like his
collaboration with VJ Iyer,
yeah,
was a great collab.
There's that. I was thinking of America's National Parks, which came out in 2016, I think, which was cool. And I think he did. Yeah, I mean, there's live stuff he's done with Zorn and stuff like that. But yeah, I think they're worth mentioning. I actually, I mean, there are some obvious ones that, you know, we can put. I mean, like, you know, Benny Goodman, I guess. Though I think a lot of people would disagree with me. I would put him because I think he's just very interesting, despite being just a complete asshole. But Duke Ellington too. But
yes,
I would say Mingus.
Mingus is great, absolutely.
Yeah, just because I think, you know, like late Mingus, when he was really composing more like, not necessarily like avant-garde big band, but like, you know, but definitely jazz that was a little more out there. You know, I think you got to give him credit for that. Like, you know, Black Saint and the Sinner Lady is just a fantastic album. Like, without a doubt, one of the best jazz albums ever made. That, you know, I think it gets a lot of recognition. I think people give what's that other one that he did, Mingus Ahum, but like,
yes.
I think that's not a bad album, but I think that Black Saint is like 10 times better in my opinion. Anyway, but yeah, I think, you know, we could talk about composers for days.
Yeah,
I think
I would just add that Duke Ellington, John Coltrane, In a Sentimental Mood might be my favorite jazz song ever. So I can definitely agree that Duke Ellington should be in the
Is that in their collaboration?
It's the first
album?
one where just that piano line and Coltrane sax. Oh, I love that song.
Actually, if we're gonna add on Coltrane with stuff, probably his version that he does with Monk of "Ruby My Dear" is one of my favorite jazz songs, without a doubt. Just the way he's able to express with that. Which if we're gonna add composers, Thelonious Monk, I would really like to add him there, just for being a complete weirdo, because everybody needs them. I mean, you know, like classical music had like Webern, you know, as like their weirder, and then like, you know, jazz is Thelonious Monk.
Yeah.
And I think maybe Dave Brubeck, but I don't know, because see, when I was thinking about people that would go into any of these lists, you know, sometimes I feel like the myth and like it's sort of like the legend of the person and their legacy overshadows how good of a musician they were. Like you know, like okay, let's just move on to trumpet then, because like, you know, I think the obvious one that'll come up is Louis Armstrong, and I would actually disagree him being on this list at all, because you know, while he did, you know, he's probably the most recognizable jazz musician of all time, but I think that, you know, when it comes to his playing, like he was not he wasn't bad by any means, but he wasn't like a virtuoso. Like I don't think he was as much of a virtuoso as some other players like him. And you know, there came a point that he sort of just recycled the same old thing after a while. I mean, nothing against the guy. I can't overstate that because Ella and Ella and Louis are like, that's like one of my favorite albums is, them just doing duets together. It's just a very nice, like, really easygoing, like, traditional album, and I'm pretty sure, I want to say Max Roach is on that album, or Bud Powell. Like, I think they both might be on that as like backing. So, but aside from Louis Armstrong, who would you put in for trumpet? Do you think? Let's just say Miles Davis is. But we're just gonna put that aside for a second.
I mean, we already mentioned Wadada Leo. I think he is a great addition to that list. Don Cherry for sure.
I put down Don Cherry too,
especially because he the pocket trumpet is not as widely used, and he kind of had that distinct sound, both in just his choice of instrument, and just the way he played, and he also was a great band leader in his own right.
I haven't listened to a lot of Don Cherry's stuff, like solo stuff.
Symphony for Improvisers is I got it it's one of those, I think it was either $3 or $4 at Boom. It was like wicked cheap, and it's a fantastic album, and he did a great job as a band leader, as much as obviously supporting Ornette Coleman. But I think for the list of great jazz trumpeters, I don't know, man. Just it's just it's for me, when I think of jazz trumpet, I honestly just think of Miles. And I know that might not be fair, and it's not to me at least. It's not like jazz saxophone, where obviously you have people like Coltrane, but then there are a number of other fantastic saxophonists that immediately come to mind for me. Jazz, and obviously they exist, but just in my mind, for me personally, just Miles always tops the list and just kind of dominates the conversation.
Well, I think if we're going to talk about actual contenders with it, like in this fictional contest of ours, I would add Dizzy Gillespie.
Sure.
Just because man was fucking amazing at what he did, and like I don't think he had as wide of a range as Davis when it came to what he played, because really Dizzy started off in bebop and like really pioneered bebop for a while, and then went into like this weird like Latin world music type of phase, which is really cool, definitely worth listening to. I'm trying to remember an album of his that I think it's called Latin Jazz, possibly. But that's a period worth listening to. But I think Dizzy's worth arguing for, and Clifford Brown is worth arguing for too. He was killed really, really early. I think he was in a car accident, and I wonder what he could have done if he hadn't gotten into that accident. Because he was. He was probably like the preeminent like bebop, hard bop, cool jazz trumpeter back in the day. Aside from Miles, and he was like he was instantly recognizable, much like Miles. But I think Freddie Hubbard's worth mentioning too, because
for sure.
I love Freddie Hubbard. That's just my own personal thing, but I think Miles is definitely on top, and I would give it just because of just the amount of time he put into playing the trumpet. Just to develop that tone of his. That takes a very, very long time. And when he got those years in like the late 70s, early 80s, when he didn't play anything and he was basically holed up in his apartment for something like 8 years. He he lost that to a degree, and he never really got it back, even on like his final albums. So, I guess Miles is definitely it.
I mean, like I struggled to think of anyone else who I would
Lee Morgan is worth shouting out too. I think Lee Morgan's a really great trumpet player. But he was killed pretty gruesomely too. So I wonder what could have happened there. I have a feeling that he would have went like completely fusion on everybody's ass, which you know me, I'm not the biggest fusion guy, so I'm not sure how that would work out. But I don't know. You never know.
Yeah.
What instrument you want to go to next?
You mentioned someone who I was actually gonna list for a certain instrument. So instead of keeping it general, I'll just go ahead and say, for drummers, I think Max Roach.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I would absolutely say Max Roach. I think that of all the instruments in your typical jazz setup, very rarely does, obviously, the you'll have a sax solo, a trumpet solo, or whatever. The drums usually stay active throughout the the entire track, and that's not always the case. Sometimes there are breaks and whatnot. And for me, both when he got a little bit more experimental in the later in his career, but especially in more of his traditional jazz stuff, Max Roach just dominated the kit. I love, not only, I think his solos were incredible. I love what he brought in terms of because you don't always, especially in more traditional jazz, you don't always get a drum solo on every track. If you get a drum solo at all, I mean, it happens, but it's not. I mean, you're definitely going to get a sax or a trumpet solo on like almost every track, or much more frequently. And I think not only were his solos phenomenal, but just the energy and the vibrancy and what he brought to the table for like his normal drumming. I've just always been a huge Max Roach fan.
He definitely has a personality that he brings to the table that I really like. I think a lot of people would say like either Gene Krupa or Buddy Rich. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean they're great drummers, but I would actually maybe put in Art Blakey to maybe contend with Max Roach, or maybe Rashid Ali. Mm-hmm. Just because I really enjoy how Rashid Ali plays drums in like Interstellar Space.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And just sort of how like I think it's such a tough instrument to really make to like put personality into. Yeah. Because I think like even with like a even with like a guitar where it's not a wind instrument, you're still able to create sort of your own personality with it. You sort of have your own little style. But with drums it's really hard, and like really the only two people I can think of besides Max Roach would be like maybe Art Blakey, definitely Rashid Ali, but Milford Graves as well.
Milford Graves is a great drummer. Absolutely.
Maybe Milford Graves might be on top actually. I'm trying to think, because I mean I really haven't listened to any like late career Max Roach. Like, so like what was he doing like in those later years that they get you so like hot and wild?
I think you get that kind of the solo Max Roach from his earlier stuff, like from Percussion Bittersweet and whatnot. And I'll admit I've listened to mostly his earlier stuff, but me too. More later stuff I've heard bits and pieces of. You kind of get that solo Max Roach, up to 11 for the entire the entire track. But also just in terms of creativity, he had a song called or not a song, an album with I think the Boston Percussion Orchestra, where he composed and arranged a bunch of different classical pieces as well as his own his own work, and just had them arranged just for percussion. And I think that the results are a little bit mixed, but just the creativity there, and the way he was able to represent it, kind of like you said, bringing out the personality in percussion. I don't think every single experimentation worked on that album, but it just kind of the thought there and what went into putting that together always been made him stand out in terms of his career.
I wonder whether those are the right parameters. But like, I mean, not to take this thing super seriously, but like, I think that shows his chops as a composer, but as like a drummer, it's himself, like just as having the ability to play, I don't know if that really says anything more than it could.
Sure, yeah.
But I mean, you could say the same about I think any of these guys. Elvin Jones is worth mentioning. I think Elvin Jones doesn't get a lot of credit for playing with Coltrane, but I think he's worth mentioning. Billy Cobham's worth mentioning too. And even though he's only one part of the percussion section on Bitches Brew, Jack DeJohnette.
I was gonna say him. Yeah. He also is on probably is one of my favorite drum solos ever for jazz on Live Evil. I always forget the song because I just listen to it.
Savad.
I think so. It might be.
That's like the opening track.
I think it was deeper in the track listing. I'll have to figure out what song it was.
Yeah,
but I mean that solo was just just so much energy, and I really do love his his drumming for sure.
Yeah, I really haven't because I think he turns up in a couple of Wadada projects too.
Yes, he does. His Golden Quartet. He's on that, and that is a super underrated quartet. That I think one of the album I have is Year of the Elephant, and there's another one which is I guess self-titled for the Golden Quartet, and those are really cool albums.
Yeah, this thing I really haven't listened to enough of DeJohnette to say but I mean much credit for Live Evil, much credit for just that fusion era of Miles Davis's career. But I don't know what are you just on board with Max Roach?
I think for me that's just that's where I put my money.
I would probably put my money there too, just because I've probably listened to more Max Roach than any other of these guys. Maybe I want to say maybe I've listened to a lot of Art. Actually, I really haven't listened to enough Art Blakey, but Art Blakey is worth checking out. If anybody who's listening to this hasn't really listened to his stuff, because he put out a lot of albums and they're all really good. So Max Roach on drums. All right. Let's do bass, because bass was probably the hardest one for me because I don't really know a lot of jazz bassists, and I think it's tough to hear them too.
Yeah, even bass solos a lot of times. If I have it on in the car on the highway and then it's a bass solo, sometimes I'm like, wait a second, did the CD stop or whatever? Yeah, because you hear it over the car. I'm on the highway and it's just
it's tough to hear. Even sometimes if you're in a choir room, I actually for the longest time I couldn't recognize bass in a song. I don't even know how that's possible, but I just wasn't able to. I think it was maybe just because I just didn't pay attention enough, which is I not a good thing. It's a bad, but I do have a couple. I think we all know. I mean, if we're gonna be honest, I think Mingus probably tops this list.
Yeah. But he had such a distinct style, and he's probably the most famous jazz bassist, I guess.
Paul Chambers, I think is really good too. Ron Carter's really good too. Scott LaFaro doesn't get a lot of credit, but he was playing in the Bill Evans trio for a while, and but to be fair, I think when you listen to a Bill Evans album, you're listening for the pianist.
Exactly.
Though I can't say he's ever done a bad job. That I think that's part of the reason that these lists are really tough to do, because I think a lot of the recordings that all these musicians are on, the people who are the band leaders have a really good ear for other musicians, and they have a really good idea of chemistry, and so it almost it's almost like they're able to meld together so well that it's that this whole question becomes superfluous, which in a way this question is superfluous, because it's greatest jazz musicians, they're really it's such a non-definitive list in a way, because you just can't make a greatest list, it's just not possible, at least in my opinion, when it comes to these type of lists, you're remember how Rolling Stone did a bunch of those, greatest guitarist of all time, greatest albums of all time, greatest bands of all time. It's really, of all time? So you're saying like 500 years from now,
Yeah.
like they're gonna be like, oh yeah, dude, like remember U2? like, like fuck no, like we're gonna be talking about the Glip Glops. Come on.
Exactly. And I think especially for, I mean, when you're doing, you know, best albums of the year, you were following, you know, they were following it all year. You have a just, you know, a start and an end. There you go. But especially, you know, when they do best albums of the decade thus far, which is going to be obsolete in 5 years, or even when they do like their top 500 albums of all time, you know, and then they ended up updating it a few years ago because obviously a lot of albums come out, and with all these things, I mean, you know, we're kind of putting parameters around a specific period of jazz, more or less. You know, performers improve on things. You know, for example, just you know, jazz has gotten more experimental and more crazy, and people, you have performers of the past, you see what they did, and now younger performers can not only look to that as a starting point, but then get better. I mean, it's especially true in metal. You know, metal's gotten faster and more technical over time. Jazz, I think, has gotten crazier, more experimental over time, just because, you know, the old guard established this is what experimental jazz is, and then, you know, people want to beat that. I mean, that's just our natural competitive nature and our natural, you know, our innate desire to create and do something new, and you want to build on what's already been established.
I wouldn't say that it's a will to dominate, but a will to sort of do something different.
I know a will to stand out. You know, a will to, I want to put my mark, you know, that hasn't been made before on this genre.
Yeah, so I guess to take it all back, I guess Mingus, because we suck with bassists, I guess.
Well, just because, I mean, frankly, like a bit. I mean, I guess obviously this falls outside of the years we're talking about, but Thundercat, I mean, I think it's a great example.
Thundercat's a great bassist. Damn.
Like the best bass solo I've heard in a jazz song is on The Epic, on Eskeem, when he opens it up with a bass solo. I mean, you can actually hear it. The tone is great. You know, a lot of personality, like we've been talking about.
Thundercat would really be a good fit too. Thundercat's great. But at the same time, though, how well do you think he blends in with whoever he's working with? Because I feel like whenever I hear Thundercat, like I know it's Thundercat, and like, but I don't necessarily think that's a good thing, because he's sort of like it's almost like he stops the show in a way.
I think he blends in really well in The Epic. I mean, obviously, his style of music isn't always straight up jazz, like that great song, I think it's like Oh Shit We're on X or whatever. It's where the music video is of that X-rated cat cartoon.
I don't, is this from his new album?
This is from, I think, his oh god, it's not his most recent one, but
where the Giants from, that like mini album.
No, it was before that. I gotta look it up because
Golden Age of Apocalypse.
Yeah, Thundercat. Yeah. Not Thunderclap. Thanks, YouTube.
Thunderclap. That's my second favorite bassist, guys. Thunderclap.
Yeah. Thundercat. Oh shit, it's X.
Oh,
and the YouTube video is damn it. I gotta figure out. Oh Jesus.
Nice. Scott.
What the the music video is for like this X-rated like cat cartoon that was like this really like raunchy. I think it was the first like X-rated film ever. But like it's like super.
That's such a Thundercat thing.
I know it's so. I mean, he just took footage, like this came out in the 80s or whatever. But like the point I'm trying to make is, for that it was like this really kind of glitzy beat, and then he's singing, and the bass is kind of just blending in. Like obviously you have that point where he's doing his own thing, but I think he is able to kind of hone it in. You know, he can have that really distorted, funky bass and do the cool R&B shit. But I also think he can kind of zone it in for a good jazz performance too.
Yeah, I wonder how much. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really do like Thundercat, and also just, you know, to segue just very for a very small second. If somebody sleeps with Thundercat, they can wake up and have a thunderclap. It was horrible, and
There you go.
I'm very sorry, but there's that, and just God, I still think Mingus, honestly.
Yeah.
Even though I do think Thundercats really like you know what would actually be really cool. You know how Zorn has like Masada, but then he also has like electric Masada. Like it would be cool to do like an electric version of this. And like if we did an electric version of this, I mean like it would basically be between like Jacob Astorius or between Thundercat or him and Thundercat, which I think a Thundercat would win because he's just fucking awesome. I mean, who else dresses like a Saiyan on stage? It just souls the fuck out of it. It's like, oh my god, I love that man.
Yeah, I love
like,
Thundercat.
Did you listen to the new album actually? Drunk.
I think I listened to a few songs and really liked it, but I just never got around to listening to the whole thing.
Because there's this song called, I think it's just called Japan, that all it is just him like wishing he was Goku.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, he brings a fun edge to.
Yeah,
he's a phenomenal bassist, and then he just has a good time. He's not self-serious. He doesn't, Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I also, if we're gonna mention people, Greg Cohen from Masada, and from a bunch of other fucking projects with Zorn. I think he's a great bassist, and like I think just for keeping some really good time, but then also having just like a really unique sort of style too. Definitely Greg Cohen, but I think Mingus. Yeah. Okay. So far we've got Max Roach, Mingus, which is actually pretty funny because both of them, I'm pretty sure, are on an album on this. I've talked to you about this called the Quintet, Jazz at Massey Hall. It's like Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Bud Powell, Max Roach, and Mingus all playing.
Wow.
And it's fucking amazing. It's a great album. Which hopefully won't spoil everything else. But so we got Max Roach, we got Charles Mingus, and we've got Miles Davis. So I want to save saxophone for last because I feel like we're probably gonna fight over this a lot. So let's just do piano. And I off the top, I'm just gonna list a bunch right now, and we'll just duke it out. Keith Jarrett, Bill Evans, Oscar Peterson, Thelonious Monk, Herbie Hancock, Art Tatum, Bud Powell, McCoy Tyner, Ahmad Jamal, Dave Brubeck, Horace Silver, and Red Garland.
Just to name a few.
Just to name a few. Well, I was trying to think about like who would actually be on this, and I feel like I feel like all those are really, really good picks. I mean, some are less known than others. Like not a lot of people know like Ahmad Jamal, but like he's like him and Red Garland are like really, really responsible for like, when you hear Bill Evans playing block chords and like Miles Davis's like predilection towards block chording, that comes from Ahmad Jamal. So, and Miles has admitted that many times in his career. So it's like I think it's worth just even mentioning him. But I mean, I think I don't know. Off the top of my head, I would say Bill Evans, Herbie Hancock, or Monk, maybe.
I think it's gotta be Herbie. That's just me. He brought a lot to the table. I mean, he was able to do such a wide variety of different things.
I mean I like Herbie too, don't get me wrong, but I'm also thinking, I mean I think Bill Evans is really, really great at what he does too, but at the same time he doesn't go as far as Herbie Hancock.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Bill Evans' piano playing is gorgeous. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But he has a specific thing he does exceptionally well, whereas Herbie can do the bop. He can do the avant-garde stuff and then the fusion stuff as well, and he brings a lot of interesting stuff to the table in a variety of different styles. I love Empyrean Isles. Why am I forgetting? Maiden Voyage.
Maiden Voyage is great.
Sexton.
Man-Child,
Headhunters. The fact that on any given day, I can listen to a great, straightforward bop album from him, like a really freaked out performance, something that's more funky, something that's a bit more on the fusion side of things. There's just so much that you could get from a Herbie Hancock performance.
That is a good point. I think. Oh, I just want to mention too. Jamie Saft. If we're going to talk about a little modern players, he's a really great piano player. He's worth checking out. He actually just put out an album this year called I don't remember what it's called. But it's all solo piano. It was okay. I wasn't really a big fan of it, but I think he is a player worth talking about at some point in the future. But see, that's the thing. I really like Bill Evans. But I mean, I guess he is really limited. But damn. Yeah, I guess Herbie.
I guess Herbie.
I know. Well, I really, really love Bill Evans. Bill Evans is probably my favorite jazz pianist. Just because of just the way he, how lyrical he is. Either that or Monk. But Monk is I like Monk because it's if I'm feeling really odd,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put that on. But I think, you've seen my Monk collection, right? How I have those two big ass those cheap CD collections that they have where they compile 12 albums of his. I got 2 of those. And I remember just spending an entire week listening to them, and I was so sick of it by the end. Because it was just because he creates some really great compositions, but he only really plays those compositions.
Yeah.
So and you can tell that it's him you can tell that's his composition, and it's okay, all right, enough. Come on, Thelonious. So yeah, Herbie Hancock.
Yeah.
I guess actually there's this he was doing this masterclass on, I'm trying to remember the website, but they have it on YouTube, and I've been really meaning to watch it because it's all about breaking the rules, which I'm I'm always for, because that's basically my maxim is nothing is true, everything is permitted. Just I love that. I actually have that written down. Just I have a sticky note on my wall that just says nothing is true, everything is permitted. But okay, Herbie Hancock. So toughest one, saxophone, without a doubt, because we are definitely gonna have different opinions here. Because I'm thinking okay, I'm just gonna list what I have. Coltrane, obviously, Charlie Parker, Lester Young, Wayne Shorter, Stan Getz, Ornette Coleman, Dexter Gordon, Ben Webster, Sonny Rollins, Paul Desmond, Jerry Mulligan, Pharoah Sanders, Eric Dolphy, and Hank Mobley. And I think they're all great. I would probably get rid of Hank Mobley first, and probably Pharoah Sanders, despite I really do like him, but is that later stuff? It's like Albert Ayler's later stuff. It's just
Yeah, I love. I mean, Karma is phenomenal. Black Unity is phenomenal, and then
Black Unity is great. Oh my god,
those are the 2 essential ones. He has some other great ones. But I think the unfortunate thing about Sanders is that he was his discography. Well, I mean, he's still alive, but his discography is pretty inconsistent. Some of the I think I told you, or we've talked before. I bought.
Yeah, we have.
Oh Lord, don't do me wrong, or whatever it's called, is it's basically the modern day equivalent of a coffee shop jazz album. It's just super corny, and he kind of like you said with Albert Ayler's later stuff, he really just
lost it.
It didn't cancel out the stuff he did, but yeah, it does put a sour taste in your mouth. How you have
you know what? I'm trying to think maybe he went so far off the edge that he came back around the other side.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
He was so experimental that he just kind of turned around to being really, really simple again.
Yeah.
I, as much as I love Pharoah's playing.
Yeah. And I mean, as much as I really like them, Paul Desmond and Jerry Mulligan, I don't think, just in terms of variety, I don't think they have a lot of it, but I think they're worth mentioning. Paul Desmond is, I feel not a player that doesn't get recognized enough, because, usually when we think of his stuff we think of Take Five, which is, Dave Brubeck, and people think more of Dave Brubeck, and I'm like, which actually could have concluded Dave Brubeck for piano, but I don't really think he's that great of a player compared to some of the other ones.
Obviously, Take Five is a great, that's phenomenal. But
great track. Timeout's just a good album.
Yeah, Timeout's a great album overall.
But I wouldn't count him up there because I think he was like, I think what sets him apart from people, but doesn't necessarily make him better, is just the fact that he was playing around with different time signatures. Which, I mean, it's something I think it's laudable to a degree, but not, like it's like that person that can just do like that one special thing, and they can only do that special thing. Like, it's like, okay, guys, but actually, Dave Brubeck just died actually a couple years ago now. I'll say it's 2013, 2012, maybe. So maybe not that short of a time ago, but still way off track. Okay. So what do you think of Sonny? Okay, I would count Ben Webster out. I really like Ben Webster. I think he's a really, really underrated player, but I think when it comes to variety, I think maybe put Dexter Gordon off too. What about Ornette?
I don't know. I mean, I love Ornette Coleman's music. His playing was good too. Definitely ahead of its time, very influential and whatnot. Well, just in terms of the longevity of his discography, there are a lot of just kind of okay. I think probably the best thing he did, later in his career was Sound Grammar. Which was a live album.
Good album.
Basically from, all the landmark stuff he released in the beginning of his career, to the point where when I was like researching more on Sound Grammar and just like where the tracks came from that he performed, like there's a whole like lot, like just a ditch in his career of albums that people just don't talk about and don't remember. Which is really unfortunate. But then you listen to them and they're just okay. But, I mean, not to discount his legacy. Obviously, he was a great player and he did a lot of very, important things for the genre.
But, I think this is like a case of like someone whose level of musicianship doesn't equal their playing in a way. Like, not to say that he couldn't play, but like, I think he's probably more remembered for the fact that hermolytics, I think, however you say it, like his theory of music and just sort of his approach to music as opposed to his like actual playing. Because I think, but he's definitely worth mentioning. So I'm glad we talked about him a little bit. Stan Getz, we can probably get out because he really didn't do much after doing that whole like Getz Gilberto thing. Which have you listened to that? Getz Gilberto?
I don't think so. I think it's one of those. I need to listen to that and then just
you should. That's a great album. That's like if you really want to chill out, that's a great album to put on. Is Getz Gilberto. I want to put out. I probably want to take out Lester Young too, even though I think he's a really, really great saxophonist, and he was one of the first really, really great ones. Coming in Count Basie's orchestra, but and I think it was sort of cool how he sort of defined the look, the jazz look in a way. That you're like this hip cat wearing like a pork pie hat and like doing that shit. I mean, Stan Getz took a lot of influence from Lester Young. But so basically now we have Coltrane, Charlie Parker, Wayne Shorter, and Sonny Rollins. And
I personally, I think we've been kind of dancing around.
It's Coltrane.
It's just, to me, when you talk about a phenomenal discography, just an insanely talented player. I remember when we were.
Are you talking about the Coltrane discography thing that we were doing? Or
yeah, and I watched a documentary about him, and just watching him play, because
yeah,
obviously, he passed away a long time ago. I never get to see him live.
50 years ago,
Yeah,
man.
and I've only really listened to his his music just on CD or vinyl. Watching him play, and just how effortless it seemed, but just the level of music that came out, and the level of creativity and just power. I mean, I just can't. Pharoah Sanders is one of my favorite saxophonists. I love his albums. Sonny Rollins is incredible. I love Wayne Shorter a lot. Speak No Evil is fantastic. Juju.
Wayne Shorter is great.
Juju's great.
Juju is sort of actually Coltrane worship if
Yeah.
you really listen to it, but
Yeah, I know you mentioned that before. Now I can't really hear it, but there are still some phenomenal songs on that.
it's a great album. Yeah,
But
nothing wrong with that.
I just can't see putting anyone above Coltrane. Like I really can't.
See, I love me some Coltrane too, but I almost want to put Charlie Parker, because I feel like Charlie Parker is a contender. I feel like if he hadn't died so young, I think that he could have completely revolutionized jazz in a way that Miles Davis couldn't even dream of. Because he was just a force, but then at the same time, Coltrane, I've never seen somebody so dedicated to their instrument as John Coltrane. Just you hear these stories about him just sitting outside of before going on set and just trying for an hour just to find the right reed, and just trying each one and just throwing it out because it wasn't right, and just just that meticulousness, and the fact that he would just spend all of his waking moments playing saxophone.
Mm-hmm.
And just and the fact that he is probably the most recognizable saxophonist on this list in terms of tone. I think the only person I could think of who even comes close would maybe be Sonny Rollins, maybe Ben Webster, because but I think that's just because Ben Webster sort of has this sort of cool jazz sort of thing locked in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Coltrane definitely has just everything. And then see, this is sort of, we're sort of go back to Ornette, but I think we almost include what Coltrane did for music too on top of this, which I really don't like to do. But I mean, at the same time, it's not like we can separate these parts because they were one and the same, which is an interesting thing to think about. Where is the line between composer and performer? Especially in jazz, because I think with classical music, I think it's a little more distinct. That you have someone like Stockhouse, and you have someone like Xenakis, who composed and then but never really played himself. But then you have someone like Miles Davis, who's just doing both.
Yeah.
And then also in jazz you have someone like Gil Evans, who was really much more of a composer than anything. Though he was a great composer for what he was doing. But yeah, fuck it, Coltrane.
For me it just has to be
I know,
the two categories I knew were going to be defined were Davis and
I didn't it's not that I don't think he doesn't belong there, but it's just I think it's just such an easy answer. Some of these are just such easy answers in a way, and I feel if we had reduced, if we had set parameters a little tighter, I think we would come out with just slightly different answers. If we just kept it within traditional jazz, probably not, actually. I'm thinking about it, because all these dudes can do traditional jazz really well. Yeah, I just okay. So dream lineup. They're all playing in heaven, guys. Max Roach on drums. Herbie Hancock on piano. Okay, Herbie Hancock is dead. So Herbie Hancock's actually channeling the spirits of these guys. He's sort of astral projecting himself into heaven to chill and be like, oh yeah, hey guys, Mingus on bass, Coltrane on saxophone and Davis on trumpet. So
that'd be one hell of an album.
So Scott, what do you think they'd be playing?
I think the really the only overlap.
What would you like to hear them play?
I'd like to hear a really great, solid, just bop album. I think because I think that's the best intersection of their talents. You know, Coltrane never really did fusion. Davis never truly did like free jazz or like that level of jazz. I think just a really solid, everyone on firing on all cinders post bop album would be just incredible.
That would be awesome.
You got that feel on Kind of Blue to an extent because obviously you have Coltrane and Davis on a number of songs. And then, like you mentioned before, how Mingus and Roach kind of linked up for that album.
I'd really like to hear them do like, as strange as this is, all like Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie standards. Like do like Salt Peanuts and like do Dizzy Atmosphere, Night in Tunisia. What's I'm trying to think of. There's a couple of Coco too. Like I don't know, I think that'd be really cool because I think that they would take what those guys did and just go with it even further. Which I mean, basically, is really what they did in history. But to see them do it now, I think that'd be really cool. Mm-hmm. But I actually, it's a funny thing. It's like years ago, I actually wrote a poem that was basically this very thing, that they were all in heaven, that making just some fucking awesome music. I'm trying to remember who was. It could have been like the entire lineup to Kind of Blue.
Yeah,
if I remember right. But all right. I mean, do you I don't know. Like I'm trying to gauge whether this was a good episode or not.
No, I think it was a cool conversation. It's nice to like. I love when we talk about these dream. Like when I was younger, I used to do. Of course, that was back when I listened
to
to
rock band.
Yeah, when I used to do a lot of ska. Or listen to a lot of ska.
I didn't expect that.
So I do like my ideal lineup, and so some of the lineups were like atrocious. Like they were basically just all the different bands. Like I think I had, like some of the members from Angels and Airwave, and then like Real Big Fish. Like
I was just gonna say Real Big Fish.
And then like Less Than Jake and whatnot. Like I had like all like this basically like abomination of a lineup.
Any Mighty Boss Tones in there?
Like probably. I don't even know. Like it's just like. It was basically like at least we're staying within one genre. I just did like my dream, and then it got even weirder when I would get into like deathcore and stuff like that. Like it just
Less Than Jake, featuring the guy from Whitechapel on vocals.
Exactly, and it's just So like it's it's fun to do. It's fun to think about what could have been, and then of course it's fun to think about now. I think Pitchfork did they've been doing a lot more like polls of their audience, say posing a question, and they posed what dream collaboration would you like to see, and it's really fun to think about like what could potentially happen. Like for me, I would love to see St. Vincent and PJ Harvey collaborate. I think that would sound amazing.
If we're gonna talk about dream collaborations, I would like to see like Hacks and Cloak in The Weeknd team up.
That'd be amazing. Which
is like such an odd combination. I don't know how well that would actually go. Either that or Hacks and Cloak and Trent Reznor.
Yeah.
I like one of the like Hacks and Cloak just needs to be with somebody.
Yeah, Hacks and Cloak needs to do something.
Or just do something, because we haven't heard from Hacks and Cloak in a long time.
I know.
And that's really bothering me. I really miss him. If you're out there listening to this, we love you, and we want you to make something new, and because we'll buy it. So love the Torture Garden, guys. Okay, so guys, thanks for listening, and if you haven't already, subscribe. If you like this, I don't know, maybe we'll do another one of these in the future. Maybe do like metal or something like that.
That'd be great.
That would actually be pretty funny. I'd say look on iTunes for this, but it's not going to be on iTunes because SoundCloud, I guess, we uploaded as much as we could at this point. So I'm trying to figure out solutions to that. So bear with us because we suck. Or just me. Scott's fine.
I'm okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you're okay. And until you screw up next time, I don't know. Are you going to call this? Are you going to call this Heavy Vanguard again?
I might. I would not be surprised if that happened at least one more time.
All right. Well, I think that's it for us. Listen to some jazz, guys, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Bye.